Street Fighter, Street Bloody Fighter, a franchise with so many sequels, spin-offs, reboots, rebrands, reimaginings and crossovers is borderline miraculous that Capcom hasn't lost control of it entirely. From arcade halls to Hollywood flops, this series has been everywhere, and yet despite its global reach, there are still official entries so obscure, so utterly forgotten, that most fans have no idea they ever existed. And today's tale concerns perhaps the most baffling of them all, a licensed Street Fighter game that was released only in Japan, only on PC, and only for a short time before vanishing into the digital aether. No re-release, no emulation, no preservation, just whispers on message boards and a handful of videos to prove it ever existed. What was it? Why was it made? And how, in the name of M. Bison's psycho power, did it get approved in the first place? Let's find out. Hello ladies and gentlemen, Big Daddy Top Hat here. This is the incredibly lost and sadly delisted Street Fighter Online. Yeah! Capcom may not always listen, but when they do, they go big. And Street Fighter 6 Year 1 and 2 Fighters Edition is proof of that. This is the definitive version of the game, bundling together not only the brilliant base game, but also 8 downloadable characters across 2 seasons, including the likes of Akuma, M. Bison, and even guest stars like Mai Shiranui and Terry Bogard. And the best part, using my affiliate link, you can pick up this full package for a whopping 18% off the Steam price. And beyond that, you'll find up to 90% off of thousands of other titles. So go check out the deal, support the channel while you save, and enjoy the rest of this video. Throughout its long and storied legacy, the Street Fighter franchise has delivered a multitude of iconic installments, spin-offs and oddities, from the mighty arcade cabinets of the 1990s to the cinematic disasters involving Kylie Minogue. But buried beneath the Hadoukens, the rivalries and the hype lies a forgotten entry so peculiar, so utterly surreal that Capcom themselves seem to pretend it never existed. This was a Street Fighter game with no arcade stick, not even a controller, nor a keyboard either. In fact, it's a bizarre fighting game that was played entirely with your mouse. Seriously, I'm not joking, and no, this is not a fan-made parody, not some twisted Mugen mod with Gordon Ramsay fighting Goku. This was a real, officially licensed, physics-based Street Fighter game released in 2008 exclusively in Japan and accessible only online. This was not your typical fighter though. This was Street Fighter Mouse Generation, one of Street Fighter's strangest and most tragically forgotten experiments to date. It is utterly bizarre, raising the question, why was it made, why can't anyone play it now, and what twisted reality led to this fever dream of a project being greenlit in the first place? Let's investigate. In the late 2000s, Capcom found itself in an experimental phase, with the PC market in Japan slowly expanding beyond visual novels and MMOs, and casual digital downloads becoming more viable. The company began quietly exploring unorthodox ways to leverage their biggest IPs. Among the more bizarre results of this creative burst was Street Fighter Mouse Generation, a game that rather infamously was controlled entirely with a computer mouse. Mouse Generation was developed and released in 2008, not by Capcom themselves directly, but through a little-known joint venture called Delisted. Now, Delisted was a collaboration between Capcom and a Japanese tech firm called Games Arena, whose job was essentially to handle online PC game distribution and micropayment systems. Think of it as Capcom's way of testing the waters of a Japanese PC market without getting their own hands dirty. But things get even stranger. Mouse Generation wasn't just a Street Fighter game, it was also a bizarre crossover with Revoltech, the collectible action figure brand by Japanese company Kyoto. Revoltech lent the game its distinctive visual style, with every character looking like a living action figure, complete with plastic shine, clinky joints and exaggerated proportions. It wasn't just a design choice, it was an entire premise. The game lets you pit these articulated avatars against one another in what was, technically speaking, a 3D fighting game, where the gameplay was mouse-driven mayhem. You click drag to inflict your way to victory. Characters included the likes of Ryu and Chun-Li in toy form, but things quickly spiraled into crossover chaos. Alongside Street Fighter veterans, players could also choose from licensed characters based on manga, anime, and even classic Chinese literature. Customization was included to a degree, a few outfit swaps, a toy-style parts, but don't get it twisted, this was never meant to be a competitive title. It was part fighting game, part collectible figure display, and part tech experiment. A mutant creation born from licensing deals, online distribution schemes, and a healthy dose of why not? You controlled your fighter using only the mouse, movements, clicks and even the scroll wheel. It was less like Street Fighter and more like trying to win a brawl while wrestling with a possessed desktop cursor. The characters themselves weren't just stylized, they were literal action figure versions of familiar faces, built using that Revoltech proprietary 3D engine. Limbs were blocky, joints were exposed, and everyone looked like they'd just fallen off a shelf at Forbidden Planet. This engine boasted maximum flexibility, which is marketing speak for they flop around like drunk marionettes. You could swap out body parts, reassemble your fighter like a Frankenstein toy and dress them in a wild assortment of outfits. The result, an army of plastic weirdos who all looked mildly cursed. The whole thing looked more Robot Chicken than Street Fighter 4. The game was free to play, but of course the real money came from microtransactions. Delisted monetized the experience via a digital store, and in true Japanese fashion, in-game gashapon machines. Licensed from Bandai no less. You could spend real yen on new limbs, accessories or full outfits. Some of these made sense, others were baffling. One infamous example, a squid-shaped hat, included as part of a cross-promotion with squid-shaped USB sticks. Yes, really, because nothing says authentic Street Fighter experience like turning Ryu into a USB squid. In April 2008, Capcom launched a closed beta test in Japan. Reception from those who managed to get in was a mixture of confusion and polite bemusement. Japanese PC gaming sites noted that the physics were interesting, but acknowledged that the core gameplay was deeply unintuitive. Still, the novelty of a mouse-only Street Fighter game, complete with original designs and flashy presentation, earned it some buzz, at least in niche circles. The game officially launched in July 2008, but only in Japan. It was distributed through a proprietary digital service, not through Steam or retail, and it was tied to an online-only infrastructure, meaning players had to be constantly connected to Capcom servers. Mouse Generation followed a freemium model, with optional purchases for new characters and costumes, but the base game itself was extremely limited. No offline play, no practice mode, just 1v1 jank, delivered entirely via mouse clicks. Despite being one of the strangest entries to ever bear the Street Fighter name, Mouse Generation did at least bring a few familiar faces to the party, albeit in the form of haunted plastic figurines. The playable roster featured several Capcom representatives, though even here the selection raised a few eyebrows. Front and centre naturally was Ryu, because it's not a Street Fighter game if Ryu isn't front kicking someone in the chest with absolute emotional detachment. Alongside him came his longtime frenemy, Ken Masters, whose rubbery blonde action figure likeness made him look like an off-brand Barbie accessory. Chun-Li made the cut as well, her iconic thighs reimagined here as awkwardly jointed cylinders with visible screws. The game didn't discriminate, even her spikes had toy-like edges. From the Street Fighter 2 crew, we also got Guile, complete with his iconic flat top and a suspiciously square upper body that resembled a stack of Mega Blocks. And the man, the myth, the spinning cyclone of raw patriotism, Zangief, reimagined as a glorious muscle-bound Soviet fridge. Now things get more interesting. Mouse Generation wasn't just limited to Street Fighter alumni. No, Capcom decided to throw a few curveballs, including fighters from their cult favourite 3D brawler series Rival Schools. Both Batsu Ichimonji and Akira Kazama were playable, giving the game some crossover credibility for those who remembered the Dreamcast era. Batsu's spiky-haired, hot-headed plastic doppelganger was a joy to behold, while Akira, appearing in her original biker gear, also represented her brand. There's also the mysterious Shin, Capcom's lone original fighter, who dropped into the game with its December 18th, 2008 update, and immediately injected some new weirdness into the already bizarre roster. Shin was born into martial arts royalty, the son of a Japanese karate master and a South Korean mother from a long line of taekwondo champions. Naturally, his childhood was filled with spinning kicks and stern life lessons. Unfortunately for his lineage, Shin couldn't stand any of it. Martial arts? Not his thing. He was more interested in music and painting, and left it all behind to study abroad in America, presumably swapping roundhouse kicks for watercolours and power chords. Despite his obscurity, he is technically the first Street Fighter character from Korea, predating the now iconic Jury. As if playing a Street Fighter game entirely with a mouse wasn't baffling enough, Capcom and Delisted looked at their already absurd creation and said, you know what this needs? Wuxia swordsmen, cyborgs, tokusatsu, space cops, and Barack Bloody Obama. Yes, that's a real thing that happened. Let's start with the characters pulled from the works of Louis Cha, the legendary Chinese wuxia novelist better known as Jin Yong. Mouse Generation included fighters like Hu Fei from Fox Volant of the Snowy Mountain, and Mai Chao Fang, the terrifying claw-wielding villainess from the Legend of the Condor heroes. We also got Ling Hu Chong, the rogue swordsman from the Smiling Proud Wanderer, and Zhao Batong, an eccentric martial arts elder who fights like a madman and acts like one too. All of these characters are steeped in Chinese historical fantasy, filled with secret sex, chi techniques, and romantic melodrama. What they're doing inside a Street Fighter spin-off, flopping around like physics toys, controlled by a mouse, is anybody's guess. It's like putting Macbeth in Tekken Tag Tournament and pretending it makes sense. Then, just to confuse East with West even further, they threw in a quartet of characters from Cyborg 009, a classic Japanese manga about enhanced super soldiers waging war against global injustice. It's as if someone took a fighting game roster and confused it with a Saturday morning cartoon lineup, and then poured in a bag of action figures and shook it violently. And we're not done yet. Enter Johann Krauser II, the alter ego of mild-mannered nerd Soichi Negishi, from the ultra-violent comedy manga Detroit Metal City. Nothing says tonal consistency like pairing a blast-beat growler with Ryu stoic karate. And then, in perhaps the most surreal crossover of them all, Space Sheriff Gavan, the chrome-plated interstellar police officer from a 1980s tokusatsu series, because clearly what Mouse Generation lacked was a Kamen Rider-style hero with a laser sword and dramatic posing. But the real piece de resistance, Barack Obama. Yes, as downloadable content for Valentine's Day. That's right, the US president was really added to the game, and no, this isn't some meme mod or fan-made joke. Mouse Generation genuinely let you fight as the 44th president of the United States. Whether he was licensed, parodied, or slipped in under the radar is unclear, although it might seem utterly out of place that Barack Obama was once part of a Street Fighter roster, officially, years before Cristiano Ronaldo found himself booting heads in Fatal Fury. Let's not forget that Mikhail Gorbachev was dashing across the screen to congratulate Zangief all the way back in 1991. So really, world leaders showing up in fighting games is less a glitch in the Matrix and more of a proud, baffling tradition. In the end, this Street Fighter game was essentially a digital toy chest possessed by demons, a lawless crossover carnival that obeyed no logic, respected no brand, and absolutely refused to make any sense. And that's precisely why Street Fighter Mouse Generation remains one of the most fascinating disasters in Capcom history. Needless to say, the game flopped. It attracted a small trickle of curious players, but with no marketing, no competitive scene, and no word of mouth outside Japan, it failed to generate any real traction. Events and updates were minimal, and sometime in late 2009 or early 2010, the servers were quietly shut down. No announcement, no farewell, it simply ceased to exist. Since then, Mouse Generation has become something of a ghost. No version of the game has ever resurfaced. No cracked offline build has leaked. No ISO exists in any known archive. Aside from a few gameplay clips on YouTube, it's as if the game never happened. What's more profound is that even Capcom seems to have scrubbed it from their history. It's never referenced in any anniversary material, collections or retrospectives, a lost awkward relic of Capcom's riskier years. So what was Street Fighter Mouse Generation? A marketing experiment? A physics test gone rogue? A forgotten PC exclusive made for a niche within a niche? Perhaps all of the above. What we know for certain is this: it was real, it was official, and it was absolutely bonkers. And now it's lost to time. What's truly fascinating is how a game this strange, one bearing the Street Fighter name no less, could vanish so completely. In an age where everything is archived, data mined and dumped onto the internet within hours of release, Mouse Generation remains one of the few modern games to genuinely disappear. Not because it was illegal or unfinished or fan-made, but because nobody cared enough to preserve it. Its fate wasn't scandal or censorship, it was indifference, and in a world of gaming, that's the harshest death of all. In a way, Street Fighter Mouse Generation represents a moment that no longer exists, when publishers still experimented with bizarre side projects, when the PC market in Japan was just beginning to bloom, and when a mouse-controlled, action figure-themed brawler featuring Barack Obama wasn't laughed out of the room. It was ridiculous, yes, but it was also fearless, and if nothing else, it serves as a plastic click-and-drag monument to a time when Capcom had both the IP power and the sheer gall to try something completely unhinged, even if they'd rather we all forgot it ever happened. Capcom might not always hear us, but when they do, they pull out all the stops. And Street Fighter 6 Year 1 and 2 Fighters Edition is proof in the digital pudding. This is the ultimate package, the full game, plus 8 downloadable fighters spanning 2 chaotic seasons are included. This means Akuma and Bison, and yes, somehow even Mai Shiranui and Terry Bogard have elbowed their way into the roster. Use my affiliate link, you can grab the entire thing for 18% off the Steam price, as well as unlocking access to discounts of up to 90% off thousands of other games too, from modern masterpieces to retro gems. So treat yourself, support the channel, and go take a look. Cheerio!